Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are unpacking a story that is um, arguably one of the most significant medical reversals of the entire 21st century.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds like hyperbole, like I'm trying to hype you up, but I promise you I'm not.
Yeah, it's not hype at all.
If you've been following the news since maybe November 2025, you know, the FDA dropped an absolute bombshell on women's health.
It really is a seismic shift. We're talking about a complete 180-degree turn for what, over 2 decades? Hormone replacement therapy, HRT, it's been viewed through this lens of extreme fear.
The third rail, right?
Exactly. The third rail of menopause treatment. And now, almost overnight, the regulatory landscape has just completely flipped.
And just to set the stage for anyone who missed the headlines,
Mhm.
as of late 2025 and now here in early 2026, the FDA has officially rescinded the famous black box warnings on HRT.
Right.
But what really grabbed me, what we're going to spend our time on today, is the language, specifically the language from FDA Commissioner Marty Makary.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't just call it an update. He suggested this was likely, and I'm quoting here, one of the greatest medical errors of modern times.
Which is just a staggering admission for a regulatory body. I mean, usually science evolves slowly, guidelines shift a little bit.
Yeah, we used to think this, now we think that.
Exactly. But to call it an error, that implies the data was there all along, but the interpretation went completely off the rails.
So our mission today is to figure out how that happened. How did we get it so wrong for so long? We're working from a stack of new documents, primarily a blistering analysis published just last month called 23 Years from Error to Correction. We also have the new FDA labeling updates and, the transcripts from the panels.
So we're going to look at how one single study in 2002 derailed women's health for a generation, the statistical tricks that fueled the whole panic, and why the new science says the exact opposite of what we've been told for 20 years.
Let's rewind to the original sin, as the paper calls it. Take us back to 2002. I remember this vaguely. HRT was standard then, wasn't it?
Oh, it was the absolute gold standard. You have to understand the mindset. Before 2002, if you were menopausal, you took hormones. It was for symptom relief, hot flashes, night sweats.
The usual stuff.
The usual stuff, yeah. But also because doctors believed it was cardioprotective.
Yeah.
That it kept your heart healthy, your bones strong. It was sort of sold as a fountain of youth in a pill.
And then came the Women's Health Initiative.
Yeah.
The WHI.
The WHI, a massive federally funded trial. The goal was to definitively prove those benefits. But in July 2002, they just stopped it early.
And the headlines were terrifying. HRT increases risk of breast cancer and heart disease.
They were everywhere, and the impact was instant, catastrophic.
Yeah.
Overnight, prescriptions plummeted from about 90 million a year down to 21 million.
Wow.
Doctors were terrified of being sued. Women were terrified of getting cancer. The FDA slapped that black box warning on the drugs, the strongest warning you can get, and basically said, don't use this.
Okay, so this is where we need to put on our detective hats. According to this new paper, there were massive flaws in that 2002 study that should have been obvious. So what did they get so wrong?
It really comes down to three things: age, extrapolation, and formulation. We should probably start with age because this is the most critical piece.
Okay.
The study was supposed to tell us if HRT was safe for women hitting menopause, which is usually, around age 51.
Right, that's the target audience, the person who needs help.
But the average age of the women in the WHI study was 63. Many of them were in their 70s.
Wait, so they were testing grandmothers to see if a drug worked for mothers.
Essentially, yes. They took women who already had aging arteries, some likely had plaque buildup, atherosclerosis, and then started them on a high-dose regimen.
Why does that matter so much? Why is starting at 63 so different from 51?
So this is what's called the timing hypothesis, and it's key. Think of estrogen as like a maintenance crew for your blood vessels. If you keep that crew on the job as you go through menopause, the window of opportunity, the vessels stay flexible and healthy. Plaque doesn't really build up.
But if you fire the crew?
If you fire the crew, you wait 10 years, let the pipes rust and harden, and then try to flood the system with workers with estrogen. It's too late. In fact, it's worse than too late. Reintroducing estrogen into arteries that are already damaged can actually destabilize that plaque. It can cause clots.
So the benefit literally flips depending on your age. It's protective early on, but risky if you start late.
Exactly. And the 2002 study completely missed this because they just lumped everyone together. They saw risks in these older women and just assumed it applied to the 50-year-olds too.
Which is the second flaw you mentioned, right? Extrapolation.
Right. Regulators applied those warnings to all women of all ages using any kind of hormone therapy. It just violates the basics of evidence-based medicine.
It seems so unscientific.
It was lazy regulation. And the third point is the drug itself. They used a very specific combo, conjugated equine estrogen and medroxyprogesterone acetate.
Equine as in horses.
Yep, derived from the urine of pregnant mares. It's a mix of estrogens, some aren't even found in humans, and the progesterone part, that's a synthetic progestin, not the same as the natural stuff your body makes.
And we have better options now.
Much better. Bioidentical estradiol, micronized progesterone, things that are structurally identical to human hormones. But the black box didn't care. It tarred every single formulation, pills, patches, creams, with the same brush.
So wrong age group, wrong application of the findings, and a massive overgeneralization. But the headlines, they were so specific. 26% increase in heart disease. I mean, that sounds terrifying.
And this brings us to the statistical trap. This is where it gets, frankly, infuriating. That 26% increase is what we call relative risk.
Okay, break that down for us. Relative versus absolute risk.
Relative risk compares two groups. So if one group has 4 people get sick and another has 5, that's a 25% increase. It sounds huge.
Right.
But the absolute risk tells you the real story. It's just one extra person.
So what was the actual risk in the WHI study?
The source material breaks this down perfectly. The absolute risk increase was 0.08%.
0.08%.
Correct. In real numbers, that meant 8 additional cases of heart disease for every 10,000 women per year.
8 in 10,000. That was the deadly spike.
That was it. And to give you some context, the Sean paper uses a car crash analogy. Your annual risk of dying in a car accident is about 11 in 10,000.
That's higher.
It is higher. And we don't put a black box warning on every car saying, warning, driving may cause death.
That really puts it in perspective. We accept a higher risk just driving to work.
Exactly. It was a failure of context. They promoted the scary relative number without the much less scary absolute number.
And what about breast cancer?
Similar story. An increase in diagnoses, again, about 8 per 10,000, but, and this is crucial, there was no significant increase in breast cancer mortality.
So the panic was about a risk that was statistically tiny, and for mortality, basically zero.
Yes. Risk perception drove the policy, not the actual magnitude of the risk.
But this isn't just about bad math. There's a human cost here. The section in the Show 'em paper on that it's grim reading.
It's heartbreaking because when you scare 50 million women away from a useful treatment, you don't just save them from those tiny risks, you deny them all the benefits.
And the benefits are huge.
They're profound. According to the analysis, just between 2002 and 2012, among women aged 50 to 59, the group that should have been treated, they estimate 91,000 premature deaths.
91,000. That's a stadium full of people. That is just a staggering number.
And that's just a 10-year window. The primary driver is heart disease. We now know that if you start HRT early, it reduces fatal cardiovascular events by 25 to 50%.
That's a massive reduction.
It is. Estrogen keeps arteries flexible. By denying it, we let a generation of women's arteries harden faster than they should have. And it's not just the heart, it's the brain and bones, too.
Right, the neuroprotective element.
The data cited by Mehari shows a 64% reduction in cognitive decline, a 35% reduction in Alzheimer's for women who start early, plus a 50 to 60% reduction in bone fractures.
Is that better than the bone drugs we use now?
Often, yes. It's often better than bisphosphonates, which are the standard for osteoporosis. So you have this one therapy that protects your heart, brain, and bones, and we spent 23 years telling women it would kill them.
An entire generation of doctors was trained this way. If you went to med school in 2008, the curriculum was HRT is bad, period.
That's the knowledge vacuum.
Yeah.
We created a generation of physicians who are terrified of hormones. They don't know how to dose them. They don't know the formulations. Their knee-jerk reaction is just no. And that gap will be the hardest thing to fix.
Before we get to the fix, I have to mention one thing from the report that just drove me crazy. Vaginal estrogen.
Ah, yes. The local treatment.
We're talking about a cream, right, for local symptoms. Dryness, pain, preventing UTIs. It doesn't go through your whole system.
Correct. Minimal systemic absorption. It's incredibly safe.
And for 23 years, it carried the exact same black box warning as a high-dose systemic pill.
It did. The paper calls it an absurdity. Imagine putting a warning on a topical antibiotic cream saying it causes liver failure just because the oral pill version might. It makes no sense.
It's infuriating. But, okay, thankfully we're at the turning point. November 2025, Commissioner Mehari steps in. Why now? And what exactly has changed?
Well, the why now seems to be leadership. Someone willing to just say, we made a mistake. Bureaucracies hate doing that. But as of January 2026, the labels are radically different. The boxed warnings for cardiovascular disease, breast cancer, probable dementia,
Yeah,
gone.
just gone.
Wiped. Also gone is that phrase doctors always use the lowest effective dose for the shortest duration.
I have heard that so many times. Get on it, get off it quick.
That's gone. The new guidance is individualized duration based on symptoms. If a woman needs it for 10 years to protect her bones and she's monitored, she stays on it. It's about treating the patient, not restricting access.
Is there any warning left?
Yes, and this is important. There is still a warning about endometrial cancer, but, and this is a big but, it only applies to unopposed estrogen in women who have a uterus.
Meaning estrogen without progesterone.
Exactly. Estrogen makes the uterine lining grow. Progesterone keeps it in check. If you have uterus, you need both. The warning is just a reminder of basic, proper prescribing.
Okay, so the scary boxes are gone. But the Shulman paper doesn't just want to celebrate. It wants to make sure this never happens again. They list 5 mandatory reforms.
Right, because this wasn't just bad luck. It was a structural failure. It is safer for a bureaucrat to leave a warning on a drug than to take it off.
Right, if you take it off and someone gets sick, they get blamed.
Exactly. If they leave it on and people die from lack of treatment, that's harder to trace back to them.
So how do you fix that?
First, sunset clauses. This is a great idea. A black box warning should expire every 5 years unless the FDA can reprove it's still necessary with new data.
That forces them to stay current. I like that. No more zombie warnings.
Exactly. Second is proportional response. You can't apply the risk from one specific old-school drug to an entire class of modern medications like creams and patches.
Seems like common sense. What's the third?
Absolute risk transparency. Regulators must report the real numbers, the 8 and 10,000, right next to the scary relative percentage. You can't just be allowed to scare people without context.
That should be a law for all medical reporting, honestly.
Right, absolutely should be. Fourth is an external critique mechanism. There needs to be a formal way for outside experts to challenge FDA errors and force a review, a red team.
And the final one.
Reinvestment in education. You have to retrain the doctors. You have to undo 2 decades of fear. You can change the label, but if the doctor is still operating on 2002 information, the patient suffers.
It's a tall order. But looking at this whole story from 2002 to now, it really feels like we just lived through a dark age of women's health.
We did. And as the paper says, changing course when the evidence shows you're wrong isn't just science. It's an ethical imperative. We can't bring back the 91,000 women. We can't give back the quality of life to the millions who suffered. But we can stop it from happening again.
Just makes you think about trust. We trust these institutions to protect us. But sometimes protection means withholding a treatment that could help.
And that leads to the thought I really want to leave everyone with. We lost 23 years because it was institutionally harder to say we were wrong than to just keep a warning label. So as you look around at other areas of settled science, maybe in nutrition or mental health, you have to ask, what other black boxes are out there hiding beneficial treatments just because no one wants to admit they made a mistake?
A provocative question, and one we should all keep asking. We'll have links to the Shulman paper and the new FDA guidelines in the show notes. It is really worth reading for yourself.
Absolutely. Be your own advocate.
Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time.